I knew that there was some new Goosebumps TV show on Disney Plus, and I was going to pass it by, obviously, because I knew it wasn't for me. But growing up, the books were a big deal for me. I had a few of the VHSs. I actually liked the show. I thought it was quite, it was like very age appropriate for me at 7 and 8. Do you remember it was like, it's rated Y7 because it's too spooky for children under 7.
They started putting those ratings in, and
around
you
that
start
time.
to take notice. It's like at the video games, they start to have like M on there, and you're like, oh shit, will my mom know what this is?
Yeah, right. Scorpion's gonna rip your cock out in this video game. Yeah, it was kind of evil in a way. Like at that age, your parents were buying you those games for Christmas and had no idea what they were buying you. But I always loved Say Cheese and Die, Haunted Mask, Monster Blood, Don't Eat Worms. All the famous books and shows. Night in Terror Tower. That one's really fun because you can tell that R.L. Stine had no idea where he was going with it. he's like, I'm gonna like start writing about like these kids that go on this like field trip tour of a torture chamber, and I don't know where it's going after that. And then he just gets lost in his own story. He's like, I guess they're time traveling. Maybe they're actually a prince and princess from the past. It becomes like medieval. Like
he's got to write like 3 of these every like month.
Like, come on, let's go. And I remember the Jack Black movies that came out like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. They were actually pretty successful. Like they actually did a lot of box office, and I think they kind of introduced Goosebumps to a much younger crowd. They're pretty safe. They're like not very scary. They were tongue in cheek. They were a little bit like remember like when in the 90s when they do like a Brady Bunch movie, but it was sort of a parody of Brady Bunch,
Right.
Those Goosebumps shows were like that. Movies were like that. So I didn't know what this was. I thought maybe this was I actually thought this was a continuation of that. So just by sheer fate, I clicked it, and I'm like, oh, it's a TV series, and the episodes are titled Say Cheese and Die, Haunted Mask, Don't Eat Worms, Monster Blood. I'm like, look at that. And I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. I wonder if it's just a remake of the original series. That would be at least interesting to watch. And then I look, and it's Justin Long is one of like the main characters on it. And I'm like, I love Justin Long. He's like one of the most interesting performers. I was like, what is this exactly? Like I can't quite like just deny it. So I popped on the first one. No, I saw that Haunted Mask, which is my favorite. I think Haunted Mask is like one of the ultimate Halloween stories. It's a halfway decent spooky story, but it's a very good Halloween story. Halloween being about like occupying an identity that's not yours for one night only, and maybe you become sort of intoxicated by that identity, or maybe you enjoy, being rid of your maybe you have like an ego problem or something, or maybe you get away with doing something you wouldn't normally do because you're dressed up, and it's really, but maybe you can't go back, it's not easy for you to go back to your old identity. It's a really good little kind of like fable, like Halloween fable, I think.
Right.
So I popped that one on, and they're like, last time on Goosebumps, and they start like recapping me. And I was like, wait.
Oh no.
Oh, it's like a story that travels through all of them. Okay. So I go back to Say Cheese and Die was the first one. For those who don't know, it was a book about like a kid who finds a haunted camera. And you take anybody you take a picture of with this Polaroid camera is going to die. And so pop it on, and the first thing that happens is it says Sony Picture Television. So it's not, I knew that Fox Kids used to air Goosebumps, so I assume that it's a Fox property that Disney got in their sale.
Oh, right.
But then Sony Pictures Television produced the show. So they also got like it was another third party that wasn't Disney made this. And you can tell it's not a Disney show. Like Disney doesn't really have its fingers on this. It feels more like a CW show, or like one of those now, Paramount thing maybe. Yeah. And it is decidedly for teens. It is for teenagers. It is for ages 16 to 22, maybe I would say something like that. 15 to 22. It's got, if you like a good high school, show or movie, if you like the star quarterback who, if he doesn't get better grades, he's not going to be able to play. if you like, you know, the quiet girl who reads a book at the pep rally because she has no school spirit and she wants the popular guy to notice her, but really they're just buds. Or it's got all that shit.
Yeah, it's like a Smallville or something.
Very much so. And you know, I was a little bit charmed. I was like, this is kind of fun that you took Goosebumps, you aged it up a little bit. It's a curious decision because they were very successful aging it down just a few years ago. And aging things down, especially like Goosebumps was always known as the kind of the younger horror, you know?
Yeah.
So
because it wasn't like Fear Street was like the older kids would have like the Fear Street R.L. Stein books.
Yeah. And like Tales from the Crypt was downright R-rated. I reading the books as a kid, I remember, cause I was probably about 8 when I read the majority of them. And I remember like the characters were never 8. The little brother was 8. The little sister was 8, but the main character was always 12. Right. Every, like, each and every time. It was like he had just turned 12. And this ain't for 12. This has swearing in it. Somebody Justin Long cuts himself and he goes, son of a bitch. Right? I'm like, oh my God. Son of a bitch. And it is kind of a horror anthology because even though there's a common set of characters going through. Oh, and that's the other thing is the conceit of it is that I think the conceit of it is that, if I understand correctly, is that the parents in the town of these kids are characters from the original Goosebumps books. I don't know. It's okay. It's okay. It was a fun little, like, I watched 2 episodes. A fun little hour and a half for me.